Morning, everyone. I know you're hungover and all that, so the attendance is thin. And this is like every hacker conference, every second day of every hacking conference. So it's all normal for me. But I'm going to start this discussion on a very somber note, on a solemn note. Cyber analysts like me who work in the government have been creating this scenario in our minds for a decade. As to how the South Asian flashpoint would manifest in the information battle space. We saw that. What you saw in the last week happening across between India and Pakistan was actually a war. We are still at war. And this low intensity, below threshold conflict under the tactical nuclear weapons umbrella is the new norm of war now. So we are at war right now. But there's an interesting angle to this conflict now, this skirmish. And I'm going to talk about it. It's slightly controversial, but it's eye-opening as well. And it's relevant to the discussion. Before I introduce the esteemed panelists, since this is about information operations and information warfare, and I don't shy away from naming names, Pakistan actually had an upper hand when it came to information operations or information warfare. We call it perception management. And Pakistan actually had some structural advantages when it came to perception management. We luckily are a democracy, and democracy has chaos. So our perception management was being handled by Ministry of External Affairs, and theirs was handled by a army outlet called the ISPR, Inter-Services Public Relations, which I deem as an agency as lethal as the Inter-Services Intelligence. And the way they handle perception management in this conflict, it was pretty mind-blowing. It's also it's alarming because ISPR is actually fifth dimension warfare. And they are doing it largely to control their own population, by the way, at this point. They already created the narrative that we have won the war. But now imagine if they weaponize this narrative and unleash it upon us. That's pure, high-grade, full-spectrum, no-hold-barred information warfare. And we sort of are, ready for that? I don't know about that. So I've already conveyed my concerns to the national security establishment. So this is very relevant to the discussion, what is happening right now. There's an information war going on. Now, a little bit about the premise of the discussion, because the notice was too short. We structured this presentation just 1 month ago. I'm so glad. Pardon me? Less than 1 month. And what happened was that I was tracking. I actually discovered the first foreign disinformation operation targeting India. It was an Iranian operation, and Iran is actually technically our ally. But it's very interesting. It's very interesting what the Iranians were doing. You can check the whole analysis at my blog, but I'm going to come to the point. I was able to attribute the disinformation operation to a specific arm of the Iranian state and some officials of the Iranian ministry, actually. So this was pretty phenomenal. And the outcome of this is it could have multiple outcomes in our national security environment. Now, that brought me into a group called the MISINFOSEC group, which is part of the Credibility Coalition. It's a global body which fights disinformation. And MISINFOSEC is a portmanteau of misinformation and infosec. So we are trying to create tactics and procedures for misinformation and disinformation, just like we have them for cybersecurity, like MITRE ATT&CK and all these frameworks. And as of now, there are just half a dozen people in that group. There are very few cyber threat intelligence analysts who have that kind of understanding of information warfare. One of them is Gruck, and there are a couple of people from serving members of the US Special Operations Command, and some other like-minded people, if I may say so, and just half a dozen people. So we were looking for panelists, and we're like, there's no one here. It's like a wasteland, Elliot's wasteland, right? So, and I invited a national security advisor, a former one, and also a chief of army staff. But the notice was too short, they didn't come, and that's good. Because in any case, they didn't have any idea about information warfare, especially cyber-enabled. So that gives us ample time to, discuss and, let's not, schmooze the dignitaries. Let's talk about stuff, no? So that's good. Okay. I'm also, by the way, not only a moderator, I'm also a panelist. So I'm going to take my own 5 minutes as well. Just be patient with me. But I'm going to first introduce you to the esteemed panelists here. I'm going to start with the wonderful lady. Eva is she's a fixture in the cybersecurity community. I've been following her on Twitter for a long time. She's one of those few people who live at the intersection of civil liberties and I would call it cyber operations, but she's a hacker as well. And it's a rare mix of talent. And she calls herself Outrage Fairy. And with a beautiful hairdo, she looks like a fairy as well. And she comes from, her parents migrated from Latvia, which was in the Soviet Union. She understands the power of free speech, and I think it's evident from her disposition, I say, and her writings, and her work at the Electronic Frontier Foundation. I mean, I'm one of those people who still reads John Perry Barlow's Governments of the World Unite. If you haven't read that essay, you should read that. So it's an amazing institution. I'm going to start with another hero here, Hari Prasad Vemuru. In 2010, he hacked an EVM right here in Alcon. And he got into trouble. I mean, this is how whistleblowers are unfortunately treated sometimes by the government. And I think he was under custody for some time, which is okay. I mean, that's how all the rebels, even Gandhi was under custody for some time, which is okay. So, and he probably had to flee to India, if I'm able to join the dots correctly. It's been a long time, but he's a hacker and a whistleblower. And he got the Electronic Frontier Foundation's 2010 Pioneer Award, which is like Oscars for our, fraternity. So I want to thank my mom. I want to thank the academy, that kind of thing, All right. Anand, I call him an information militant. And trust me, I say it with all the, I venerate him. And I come from a frontier town of Taran in Punjab. And he comes from, Tamil Nadu. We sort of are those minorities living at the fringes of the mainstream society. So we respect our rebels, we respect our buggies. He's a buggy, and he's the one who waged an information warfare campaign against Aadhaar and made sure that Aadhaar eventually turned out, its loopholes were exposed. By the way, I was the first cybersecurity manager of Aadhaar. So we should be basically screaming actually punching each other in the faces, but I abide by Voltaire's philosophy that, I may disagree with you, but I will defend to death the right, your right to free speech. Now, all right. Now comes my 5 minutes of fame, my 5 minutes of exposition, if you will, because I need to set the stage here because, this is a new thing for the audience. Most of them come from typical cyber threat intelligence backgrounds. So I need to apprise them of a new attack surface. I'm going to talk in your lingo, but this lingo would fit into a new jargon, a new taxonomy. Bas Alberts, he's an exploitation engineer par excellence. He is probably one of the greatest exploit engineers in the industry, works at Immunity. And he was sitting in the toilet one day and he wrote a long essay on DailyDave. And he said, you know what, we've been hacking logical attack surfaces, physical attack surfaces, but the Russians actually attacked the brain's attack surface. And they basically made the whole population a programmable entity. And this is a very important fact. When exploit engineers start talking about what I call cognitive cyber offense, we are at the cusp of a revolution here in exploitation, by the way. This is exploitation. This is not bullshit. A lot of philosophers come here, talk about thought leaders, talk about cybersecurity. This is not that. This is hardcore exploitation, by the way. This is cyber offense. Let me give you another example. There have been largely two schools of thought when it came to cyber offense. One came from the US and the allied powers, the Five Eyes, and they're like deny, degrade, disrupt the adversary. That's how hacking worked. And that's our dominant narrative because they were doing pretty well till this time. But throughout the ages till 19th century, hacking, I mean, if you also count non-technical hacking as hacking, was always about depressing, deceiving, and manipulating the adversary, the brains. Russia always thought about it that way. In fact, I think the only innovation which has happened in cyber offense for the last 30 years is actually the merging of two attack surfaces, of cyber attack surfaces and the brains attack surfaces. So I think the real innovation came from Russia. They were actually able to move an older domain of warfare to cyberspace. So this is the second school of hacking, which is not dominant. So we are seeing a huge revolution here. It's a huge power tussle. And I think a new kind of exploitation is emerging. All right. I'm just going to talk about a few more things. Now, another exploitation engineer, I'm going to talk about him, Matthew Tate, used to work at GCHQ. He was one of the, again, a very fine, I think he was a Windows exploitation engineer. You know what he does now? He teaches at law school. Why? We need hackers at law school because hackers are the arbiters of power now. And secondly, he's also the first person to actually bust DNC hack. He was like, okay, DNC hack, Democratic National Convention hack is actually information operation. He was the first one to do that before even the US government did that, at least in the public. And why are hackers exploitation engineers, by the way, talking about information operations? Because that is the next domain of warfare, cognitive cyber offense. Trust me. Now I'm going to talk about a little more technicalities. I'm going to define how to exploit these attack surfaces. What you see there are attack surfaces of the brain mapped in a taxonomy. And you can almost see, you don't have to read the image, just imagine it. There's SQL injection, there's a Stack Overflow, there's a heap overflow, and all that kind of stuff. You know what? I'm not joking. You can actually create a programmable exploit which would trigger a certain response in the brain. We are at that stage of exploitation right now. So I'm just going to talk about a few examples how it happens. So, I'm sorry. Am I? No. Am I going? My extempo going too long? All right. So, it's just important that I set the context because it's very new to everyone and new to me as well. There's half a dozen people in this group. So, let me give you a few examples how it happens. It happened to you, by the way. You all been manipulated at this point. Now, information warriors, you know that there's a thing called the Overton window, and now largely. Our national narrative, our national discourse, it's like a crowdsourced thing. We together define what are the boundaries of a discourse. And this happens informally. It's called the Overton window. It's like a boundary which we create around our narrative, our discussions, and we say, okay, beyond this window, everything is, you should not talk about this, this is offensive. Within that window, everything is okay. Now, what the hackers are doing, they're exploiting this Overton window. Let me tell you how. And exploiting this Overton window is not simple. What you do is you want to include an extreme narrative into the mainstream discussion. How do you do that? You don't start with simple escalation. You start with we call it door in the face. You start with an extreme position right away. And what happens when you amplify it on social media? The extreme narrative becomes mainstream. Now what has happened? The Overton window is like, let's say it's like a hexagon or a sphere or something like that. Suddenly the Overton window would stretch to the extreme narrative and it'll become mainstream. Let me tell you how it happened in India. We actually faced cognitive cyber offense, by the way. The words like anti-national, it's okay. It doesn't, number one, doesn't matter what your political ideology is at this point. I'm talking about information warfare. When you start with a position which is so extreme that anyone is either nationalist or an anti-national, this is a door in the face because it's a hardcore binary. Either you're with us or without us, all right? And then the media picks it up. And there's a Times Now debate. Nation wants to know who's the anti-national, who's not. And certainly the Overton window has stretched and an extreme narrative has become mainstream. That is information warfare 101. So this is how it plays out. Fact-checking doesn't work, by the way. Fact-checking doesn't work because as MIT media The Media Lab on Social Machines said lies travel faster than truth. It's not going to work. And secondly, these intermediaries like Facebook and Twitter, they're not going to help us. You know what? Because just like in cybersecurity, the false positives are too high. If you block the false positives to detect disinformation in a machine learning way are actually 10 to 20%. So if you block 100,000 pages, many of them will be legitimate, and that means lawsuits. So I'm just going to sum up and pass on the baton to other people. So one of the researchers, part of a group, he's a cognitive scientist, but he was early an engineer. And he says, red team your brain. By the way, it's very difficult to be neutral. We all biased in some way or the other. He gave an example. He was at this panel discussion on information warfare, and he passed on a chit to everyone. Are you biased? And they're like, yeah, we study information warfare. How could we be biased? That's an implicit bias we all have. It's very difficult to get rid of a biases. Red team your own brain. And these attack surfaces, how they manifest. There were two philosophers, or two psychoanalysts, Kahneman and Tversky. They realized that almost every human response is replicable, reproducible, and it can be triggered by certain information and facts that we process. Brexit weaponized it. Brexit was just about micro-targeting. It was what we call in mathematics dimension reduction. So a human personality, there's on an average, there would be around 2,400 gigabytes of data on every person, in 2020. So what we create is, we create a multi-dimensional model of you, a profile. It's very easy to create it, by the way. I don't even need your social media. I can actually create your psychological profile just by following your retina movement, by the way, at this point. It tells you a lot about how anxious you are, how neurotic you are, by the way. I can create a nice multi-dimensional profile. I'm going to convert it using mathematical modeling into a two-dimensional matrix. And that's what Brexit did. Nobody talked about it because micro-targeting is sexy, and somehow, dimensional reduction is not sexy. So this is the future of cyber offense, and that's my sort of opening statement. And let me tell you one more thing, just one, and our social structure throughout life remains the same. You will always have one best friend, two frenemies, two BFFs, and whatever, and a couple of people you don't like, but you have to tolerate them. Your social structure remains the same. Someone told me, you know what? You want to exploit Putin's mind? You know whom to target, because he'll probably always have one best friend if he has one, and stuff like that. People may change, but your social structure would always remain the same. On that note, let's open the discussion for cognitive cyber offense. And it's going to be extemporaneous. I'm not going to lead you into a discussion. Let me open the discussion with Eva, if you permit. And the baton is
Hey there. So I am going to begin by disagreeing with most of the premises that our esteemed panelist has just laid out. The first is that information warfare is not new. And it is not all-powerful. To begin with, anyone who has ever had a marketing or a sales job knows what information warfare is. It's just trying to get people to do what you want them to do. And if you are a government, maybe you want them to vote for Brexit. But if you are a seller of soy milk, you just want them to buy your soy milk. When working for the Electronic Frontier Foundation, one of my sort of jobs a few years in was that I worked as a professional activist. And activism is essentially just trying to sell something that isn't gross. My job was to sell people on the idea that digital civil liberties meant something, and that they meant enough that you should give EFF money, or buy our stickers and t-shirts, or write the letters that we thought that you should write to your government or to various companies. That is all information warfare. It's not magic, it's just marketing. Furthermore, it is not consistent, and it can actually be really difficult to replicate. The idea that humans are these programmable machines and that we no longer have free will and that we no longer have power is bullshit. Because if that was true, it wouldn't have been that hard to sell the British on Brexit or Americans on Trump. Or any number of countries on ultranationalism. The notion that information warfare is incredibly powerful, that some other being or country or power is responsible for what your country just did or the decisions that your people have just made is really tempting. It's comforting because you want to believe that the people you know didn't do that. You don't want to believe that your country has just done something stupid, that they've just bought a lemon, that they have just bought into some political ideology that you find horrifying, that they have just voted for, some kind of decision like Brexit, which is not going to be terribly good for, okay, let's go with anybody, even Theresa May. So it's really easy to shift the blame onto other people. One of the things to really remember about information warfare, and again, I'm going to go back to an earlier point, I am from the Soviet Union. I grew up in the USSR and I moved to the United States as a child. And one of the things that that my parents did all through my childhood, for reasons that I absolutely did not understand at the time, was they continued to subscribe to the government, the Soviet government paper, all through the 80s, Pravda. And it was full of lies. There was absolutely no question. This was an instrument of the government that towed the party line, that told you what the Communist Party wanted you to believe about what was at the time a crumbling Soviet Union. It was chock full of lies. And I asked my father many years later when it finally occurred to me to go, why were you still subscribing to Pravda? And he said, because when I was growing up, I thought I was really smart. And I thought that I could see through all the lies that the government told us and that I understood the truth. And so what I wanted to do was to make sure that I had a countless, sort of an endless reminder that I can't see the truth and that I'm not as smart as I think I am. That guy was actually pretty bright. And to this day, I still go out of my way to read and analyze government propaganda for this very reason, because only reading things that you agree with is kind of a waste of time. I don't need to spend all of my time patting myself on the back, telling myself how great I am. I have Twitter for that. So one other point that I wanted to make was that information warfare can be very powerful, but mostly as a tipping point. When you are already dealing with a sort of weak or sick or unprepared target or society, then information warfare campaigns can be very effective in tipping things over. So if you have a close election or a close vote or something along those lines, then information warfare can really make a big difference. The Soviet Union engaged in information warfare against the United States for the entirety of the Cold War. And for the most part, the things that it did, including going to Hollywood and trying to undermine democratic values through movies and influencing artists and starting magazines and influencing politics, none of that worked. There are so many different reports that came out after the fall of the USSR, chronicling these efforts and the increasing frustration that that the cadres had that it wasn't working. And part of that was that democracy was actually pretty strong. And when democracy is strong, then it's very hard for information warfare to be effective. But when democracy is weak, when corruption is high, when it is very easy for a lie to get all the way around the world before the truth can get its pants on, to quote Mark Twain, that's really when it can be effective, and that's when we need to take it very seriously. We don't need to believe that it's neuro-linguistic programming voodoo that's going to change the way that we think from a great distance by just tracking the movements of our eyes. I think that's hyperbolic. But I think we do still need to be aware of exactly how these work. One of the sources that I would really strongly recommend people read if they're interested in sort of how information warfare has worked on Twitter is Zeynep Tufekci, who is a professor at, I think, the University of North Carolina. And she's really fabulous, and she wrote a book called Twitter and Tear Gas, about sort of the days of Twitter and sort of the Arab Spring around 2012 and kind of how all of that fell apart. So that would be some very useful further reading. There's a part of me that really can't give up the mic without giving everybody homework, for which I apologize in advance.
Why don't I take it? Yeah. I just want to listen to everyone. And then...
in fact, let me just butt in for a minute, because I don't want to waste time too much. But I come from the other side of the fence. My job is to, of course, I come from the machinery of war, so I see it differently. I love that there are disagreements, but I also have disagreements with her disagreements, and I'm going to be very specific about that, to the point. So there's a guy called Wing Commander Keith Deer. He's actually a cognitive psychologist who's a warrior as well in the British military, and he's now doing a program called the Future of War. And he actually says, in fact, what he counters, that human brains are actually programmable entities with input-output into interfaces. We have been reduced to that, unfortunately. So I had this great discussion, an argument with Gruck, and he says, this is an older playbook in a new battleground, but the other data scientists or cognitive scientists are believing that data-driven behavior modeling, because now we can go wide, then deep, it creates a new domain. Because if you see, if you read T.S. Kuhn, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, there's always precursor to a technology, but then there's always a breaking point when it becomes a new technology in itself. I'm going to give you just one example how it actually plays out. Now, and I lost my train of thought, but especially about, there's a specific point. Yeah, now, Zeynep Tufekci, I've read a book. I don't think I loved her book, but I don't think she understands the nature of war or waging it from a psychological perspective. It's a beautiful, heart-rending book. I also read Shoshana Zuboff's book, so I'm a closeted left liberal, but, when it comes to waging war, it works a little differently. And I wanted to give you a few examples, but I just sort of, missed the point. But let me see if I can just counter her comment with something. But in any case, you can go through Wing Commander Keith Deer's presentation and see that actually we have become programmable entities with specific input-output interfaces. We actually are sort of algorithmic. See, the whole idea, her idea about defending our individuality or free will, actually is the Western's notion of neoliberalism and the whole idea of Western Enlightenment, and it may not work scientifically. There could be contestations there. So I'll just leave it at that.
Anand, why don't you?
Yeah, let's start with that.
So most of my experience in information warfare is on Aadhaar, okay? And to put it very simply, 2 years ago, I was mildly supportive of the program because of what I call as a tax-paying vulnerability, right? And let's just explain to it. How many of you believe that your tax dollars or tax rupees are wasted by the government? Just raise up your hands, right? Have you actually understood that's the most important vulnerability that Aadhaar used? Okay, so let me explain to that. And it is important that you understand the vulnerability because almost all of us feel that our tax rupees are being wasted on something, right? And in India, we have a so-called socialistic government or welfare government, and people believe that tax dollars I'm giving, which the government is spending on welfare, is basically a waste, and hence has to be managed properly. There's nothing wrong about it, right? That's a desire that you have, but there's also a deep vulnerability. So what the government actually used 2 years back was the rolled out an information warfare program funded by the World Bank, actively and abetted by a whole bunch of states, including the state of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. I will come back to that, right? Right? Including the state of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, which use the word billions, right? Now, how many of you really believe that the word $1 billion create a cognitive dissonance in your head? Do you really know how to count it? I mean, as an example? No, you can't. Yes. Okay. So, you may probably be better.
Okay. Just very quickly, what is cognitive dissonance? It's just an attack surface, I call it. So basically, because of your upbringing, because of your nature and nurture, depending on where you come from, you have fixed set of ideas which defines who you are. Like in Eva's case, she's an immigrant, came from the Soviet Union, values the idea of free speech and has a certain disposition. Anand has two, Hari has two, and I have one too. So what disinformation does is, they specifically by profiling you, they give you certain new set of information which challenges your existing set of beliefs. And you know what happens? Something very predictable. Because that's my contestation here with Eva, that I believe that everything is predictable in this phase of outcome of events. You know, when you're countered with new information which is conflicting with your worldview or disposition on which your whole life is based on, let's say your caste, your social standing or everything, it triggers an emotional response in you. It doesn't trigger a logical response in you. It triggers an emotional response in you. Like, this is bullshit, man.
Or this is great.
Yeah, this is great. And that's where all the WhatsApp uncles and all the echo chambers come from. So, no, over to you, Anand.
Okay. Yeah. So what happens? What happens in the case of the $1 billion is that you were told a very specific information about the Aadhaar program, which is it saved $12 billion. Okay. I mean, it was such an important, what they call as extension of the Overton window, because you basically said, you know what, you haven't hidden vulnerability, my tax has to work, this damn program, yeah, sure, it collects biometrics, fair enough, it's safe, unsafe, whatever. But when you're told a specific number called $12 billion in a year, which is 75,000 crores, 100,000 crores, the mind boggles and it creates an emotional response. You say, fair, whatever, maybe the government is right, and you move on. Now, here's the most important thing I figured out 2 years back when I looked at it. Because of my past history of being a balance sheet hacker before actually hacker on the programming, when I actually looked at those numbers the government put out, and mind you, this is on LPG, the gas savings, it was written by none other than the Chief Economic Advisor of India.
Subramaniam?
No, the previous guy. Not Subramaniam. Not Raghuram.
Forgot the name.
Arvind Subramaniam. It was written none other than the Chief Economic Advisor, Arvind Subramaniam, and it was published in no other place except New York Times. The damn thing basically said, Aadhaar saves billions. Yeah, sure, there were privacy problems. Yeah, sure, whatever, but Aadhaar saved billions on LPG, right? And guess what? I actually went deep dive all the way into multiple state government budget sheets, went all the way down to the center. I tracked every single oil shipment in this country. And you know what was the actual number I came up? Guess what? After all the costs were taken, the minimum loss that we suffered is $1 billion. Just on LPG itself, right? So what you basically got is an information warfare in your brain, and the damn thing worked, right? I mean, it's a classic example about the damn thing worked. Even today, people believe in my family WhatsApp groups that, well, maybe it's not $12 billion, but maybe it is 100 crores, but is it not greater than zero? I mean, why are you against it? Right? So you can see the molding pattern here. Then the pattern got extended to, guess what? Another interesting problem of the middle class brain, which I call it as the MNREGA program. So we have a guaranteed work for the rural poor program called MNREGA. The government basically wrote a wonderful, this time they didn't even bother with Chief Economic Advisor, New York Times and stuff like that. They basically used local ZTV and WhatsApp groups, right? And they said, well, so much of goes, so much of poor, so much of subsidy savings. They even got two guys from, I forgot, Michigan State University, some economists in Michigan State University, I'll go back and look at it, to write a wonderful article about how biometrics saved MNREGA programs. And the pilot program was on Andhra Pradesh, right? And so if you look at it, and if you look at it in general, Andhra Pradesh was what I call as a nerve center of the other, disinformation campaigns, right? Because of two interesting reasons. One is that most of the statistics are so made up. right? They just have one look at it and you say it makes no sense. But the question is, they were banking upon the fact that who in this bloody idiotic country called India would actually go look into a state government budget? I mean, how many of the people, I mean, right? How many people even look at the damn credit card reports, right? So this is basically a massive vulnerability in the population. So you may call yourself a great cybersecurity hacker who would write a whole bunch of reports on data security and other, but are you really mad enough to go and look at a state government budget when you don't even look at a credit card budget? This is exploitation surface at a very different level, and the damn thing worked. Believe me, the damn thing worked, right? And when I started writing about it, the first cognitive dissonance I face is, who the fuck are you?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you are arguing with New York Times author, economists with pedigree of PhD from Michigan and chief economic advisor. Who the hell are you? So this is cognitive attack surface in the sense that it's not about the data, it's about the reputation of the person who's saying the lie. And believe me, the first time it worked, right? The second time, Arvind Subramanian himself published a not so apologetic recantal on Indian Express, but not New York Times, right? And it basically made a statement which said, it is a probabilistic potential projection, blah, 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 blah. But when the article in New York Times said it's saved, I mean, remember the distinction about how it worked, right? And this is just an example of what I call as cognitive attack surface. I will also discuss next with my friend, whom I call friend, because we collaborate on this. He was a previous BJP campaign analyst, right, called Shivam Shankar Singh. His job, believe me when I tell you this, his job was to win Manipur and the Northeast using data collected at a polling booth level, through which micro-targeted messages for each individual is sent, right, which actually altered the outcome of the entire Northeast elections, apart from other factors. So here is the interesting part about India, right, which is, as a country, we are a lot more emotional, right? And we have unique attack surfaces which we have to be cognizant about. And the unique attack surfaces which we are cognizant about is about caste and creed, which a Westerner probably can't understand, right? And the other thing that we have in common with the whole of the world is about what we call as government, belief in government. And the biggest attack surface in India is most of the population actually believe in the government. I mean, unlike in the West, which had a history of not believing in the government, so that's why the savings kind of stuff worked. So what Shivam Shankar Singh, I mean, he wrote a very wonderful book called How to Win an Indian Election. I really recommend you read it. You can really understand how they had operated. So the way in which he figured out is that India population fall for grand narratives, okay? And so what he did was they basically scraped off electoral lists, which are anyway public. And as part of the Aadhaar project, there were multiple databases that was built with the state government, which had beneficiary data and stuff like that. And so you just basically pull the map and mix it up. And as usual, if you understand the recent controversy about the Election Commission, they made Aadhaar and voter ID linking in a surreptitious manner. So they had accurate profiles about this voter in this particular polling booth is this caste, and he got these government beneficiaries. And maybe he votes for the BJP, maybe he votes for the Congress, maybe he is swingy. So what should be the precise WhatsApp message I should send him so that he votes over or votes against, right? This is micro-targeting beyond what even Cambridge Analytica cannot imagine. And it worked, okay? And I know how it worked. And here's the interesting thing. I'm almost done, right? Yeah. I know how it worked. I've actually seen the dashboards. Right? I've actually seen the campaign dashboards run by the political parties, and it is mind-blowing. At some day, it will probably come out, right? And the recent controversy on AP and Telangana was also done by my friend, again, Srinivas Kodali, who actually figured out that TDP had a wonderful application called Me Seva, right?
No.
Seva Me, is it? Okay.
Mitra.
Seva Mitra, right? Which collected polling booth data and pulled out data from the SRDH and actually created what we call as the Panapramukh model. I mean, Panapramukh model is basically what Congress started at 1950s, right? So it basically says there is a voter list, every polling booth, and you print it on the pages. Every page is called as a Panna. right? And you basically mark down on every guy saying, what is his predictions? I mean, is it like this? You basically mark him saying, he will definitely vote for this party, he'll definitely vote for this party. So political party basically assigns a panna pramak which says that you just do it on a page-by-page basis. And that is just now digitalized. I mean, what we did in the paper in those days is now digitalized. And it works. And just like Eva said, remember, it's not about influencing a large population. It's about just swinging a population that is sufficient enough, which will get you the results. So if you look at Shivam's book, it talks about how he actually did it in the entire Northeast. So these are practitioners. I don't care much about theory. Maybe we're operating on a theoretical space or not. Like, it's probably evolving. But what always comes is the results, and then the practice, and then the theory. It's never the forward. Yeah? Thanks.
So seriously nervous to talk now. Huh? Okay. I was telling our moderator panelists today that there are some limitations which I may be able to spell out, I may not be able to. But yes, I want to talk a lot. Whatever is possible, let me try to express it out. First of all, being a red team is easy, not a blue team, you know. So sitting on the other side, I don't know how many are there here in the blue team. They know what's the problem when you have to sit on the hot seat and defend everything. And I do agree with the information warfare, which even we do. Let me tell about myself. I'm not just the advisor of technology to the government of Andhra Pradesh, especially to the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh. I'm also an advisor to the party. So maybe you may want to know certain information. See, generally what happens is, whenever something comes out, we build our own stories. And we think that that is true, or maybe true. Like what Anand was saying about Me Seva alias Seva Mitra. It's actually Seva Mitra. The information collected by Telugu Desam Party is not from SRDH. In fact, it's much more powerful than SRDH. SRDH has nothing. The information covered by them is nothing. You know? See, to win a war, I want to tell you, like, generally, when we feel that we are benevolent and we try to wage war against somebody who is a devil, it's not that easy to win. That's what I believe, nor maybe everybody believes. Always when we do something, we don't do with an evil intention. Generally, we do with a good intention. Before 2014, there was a survey done by the Telugu Desam Party, door to door. The information collected from the people with their own will, where we collected a lot. Yes, along with that, the voter list is always mapped on a periodic interval because it changes a lot. So as I said, the information is not from SRDH. In fact, if SRDH wants, we have a better database. A better database with more economic profile, because that time when we were doing with the economic profile, like trying to understand. When a government fellow, I mean to say like somebody goes for a survey from the government side, generally the information even from the citizen doesn't come right. You know? Even a guy who has a car will try to say that he's running on something 100 rupee a day, because he wants to have all those benefits. So let me come back from that, because I just want to cover it up that Seva Mitra is not that bad. Seva Mitra has information, and that information is used for, yes, the election intelligence. We just want to understand. We just want to understand, like, whether they are being influenced by this kind of information that is happening in social media. You can see, like, people are being navigated to a particular information to believe and in fact even check themselves whether they are correct or the information is correct, and they will be in a confusion. That's what today's politicians are using. Convince them or confuse them. So always like what happens is, how do I confuse the person who doesn't vote for me? And how do I convince a person who votes for me? That's how things are happening in India today. People are talking about election hacking and all, that's very small. The way it is being hacked is through the minds of the people today.
Yep.
It is through the minds of the people. And let me come back to Andhra Pradesh, how it is. For you guys or anybody working in information security, you need a subject to actually work upon. And Mr. Naidu is open enough to be the guinea pig. He always said that. And you're able to talk about it because there is a government which is trying to do it. And in fact, the government itself has now, under the able guidance of Mr. Naidu, has a cybersecurity wing which is hacking left and right every day, every department, and sending the information to them and asking them to correct it. It's not that easy to correct because you are habituated to a way of living and you love to do so. And you know what, the theory that what people or the department heads will come to defend about their department, they say the other department is also hacked. They don't say that why I am hacked. The other department also hacked. Let him be strong first, right? But actually to say it is very dangerous nowadays. It is too dangerous that the people who know can dominate the people who doesn't know. And most of the people doesn't understand the security part of it. The rural population doesn't understand the security part of it. And the people who know it are able to do it. And if it comes to elections, see, I was always watching for an open hardware for the voting machines what we are using. The reason being, like, the more you try to put it to the people, they'll come up with a lot of vulnerabilities. Not one person or a group can able to find out everything. It has to be open. But somehow, whatever be the reason, the Election Commission of India is even now stubborn. They did to some extent, but again, in a closed manner. They introduced the VVPATs, but again says that I'll count only 1%. I don't know what is that 1%. And which has no validation. In fact, I mean to say, even the voter verifiable paper audit trail, which we actually fought for, was not this one. We actually fought for something where there is a validation that a voter can say this is correct what I voted or this is not correct. There is nothing like that in that. It is just another display where you have to see and you have to allow it to drop it into the box. And whatever surveys happened till date says that more than 80% doesn't even look at it today. So the threat still prevails. And it is not, many people in the Election Commission says that we are different from other parts of the country, other parts of the world. The machines are different, they are not connected and all. But they simply forget that the origin of this chip is not known. Or, I mean to say, like, we have to believe that the companies which are supplying these chips are secure, safe, and do what only we want, which we can't check again. We have to just trust and believe. In elections, trust is not what you should accept. It is verifiability and accountability. That's what we always fight for. And that's what even our leader, Mr. Naidu, actually fights for it. In fact, he says, like, if you can't find a solution, let's go back to paper ballot. It is not that like he is trying to actually divert the attention of the people. No. It is just he wants to be the target. He wants to be the target so that people can give attention to what is going on. The information warfare and this kind of hacking can really show the results as if they are as per the sentiment, but it is not. That's what. It is only those swing votes. It's not required that you need to hack all the polling booths. Because with the kind of information what every party is collecting, see, we came open saying that we collected this information. Do you think that the other parties are not having the information? They have. They don't come out. And they know very well that which polling booth has what percentage of votes that comes to us, what doesn't come to us. Then a simple computational mathematics will give us what is the heat map, and with the heat map we have to work with the targets. And when others is anyway working with that kind of intelligent tools, do you think that we should be want to be fair, transparent, work with only conventional tools where you go with your bow and arrows and the other guy is coming and bombarding you? It's not possible. And this is what I want to say. And
So we have gone way past the allotted time. So we may not be able to encourage question, and also that's also a kind of information warfare on you because it's one-dimensional. But I'm just going to end it on a very humble note. We are still at war, so the undertones are slightly emotional, if you will. The way to defend ourselves is so fucking simple. Let me tell you that. Till Ahmad Shah Abdali came marauding, the Himalayas were our natural defense. Now, I'm going to quote the Deputy Director of the National Security Agency, Chris Inglis, a guy who's probably hacked the whole world, and he has some very nice advice on how to defend ourselves from information warfare, and that is simple. Diversity beats audacity. If you homogenize yourself as a society, if you want to become something which is one identity, one thing, one archetype, you are more prone to exploitation. The more diverse you are, more chaotic you are, and that is what India is. We are fucking quite robust. All right, on that note, all the best, and let's hope the elections go all safely, and a big applause for the audience and the panelists. Thank you.